Ready?
Good afternoon and welcome to the May 15th, 2023 Akron Public Schools Finance Committee meeting. Thank you for joining us. For those of you who might be listening, it's been some time since we've last met in January. We've actually been having a lot of heavy discussions around LTOP, so that has somewhat supplanted our Finance Committee meeting. But here we are back to pick up on some other things that are also important as well for the district. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order at this time at 4:42. And so you can see our previous meeting summary from January the 30th. Are there any questions, comments, corrections, concerns to that? And if there are none, we will accept them as submitted. And we will proceed on to item 2.0, our legislative overview. And so, do you want me to share out?
Yeah, I'm trying to get there. I don't see it in there. So there's no legislative overview then.
Okay. So what I have here is that the Senate Education Committee will be hearing testimony on House Bill 33, which includes the fiscal year 24-25 budget bill, including updates to the Fair School Funding Plan. Suggested updates include it is advising that we please schedule a meeting with our senator to stress the importance of keeping the 2022 base cost inputs and the 2024 statewide base cost per pupil. These updates are necessary for the formula to operate as planned, serving as a counterbalance to increasing local capacity and reducing the number of districts on a guarantee. And so we're just encouraging all of those in earshot to please reach out on this important matter to your senator. You can also go on Akron Public Schools website under advocacy, and I believe also there's a way to identify your senator in your particular area. Any comments or questions at all about that? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the item in demand, item 3.0, our 5-year forecast review, and we will turn it over to our interim treasurer.
All right,
Thank you.
We'll start with the 5-year forecast on the second page here. It's a nice snapshot of the forecast showing ending the year, this year with $105 million on cash, but going through the rest of the forecast in 2027 will be a negative $40 million in cash. But we'll go through each category here briefly. So revenue. You'll see revenue is pretty flat over the forecast. Property taxes, it's not showing any growth. There will be an reappraisal in this year, and we'll have updated forecasts once that happens in November and May. But they were showing little to no growth in property taxes. We'll move down to state aid. And we've been using the same assumptions that we did in November. We've got updated DPI numbers, and House Bill 1 will determine any future growth. We'll know more in July and provide an update at that point. You'll see the declining enrollment is having a major effect on the state aid. Instead of showing a larger growth, we're only showing a 3% growth in the state aid. enrollment is having a major impact on that, declining enrollment. Restricted grants and aid is the DPIA. So we are getting an increase. However, this is only 10% of our total revenue. Other financing sources, we're showing ESSER funds coming in, $10 million in '23, another $10 million in '24, total of $20 million of ESSER funds supplanting into the general fund in this forecast. Move on to expenses. You'll see there is an increase in expenses, most of it in the personnel salaries and fringe benefits. The personnel services are going up because of the contracts now on the forecast from the unions. Also in the personnel services, about $7 million of ESSER funds coming back over in 2025 from the ESSER fund. Employee benefits are rising. Health insurance. In 2024, we show a 10% increase in health insurance, 8% increase in '25, and a 7% in the last 2 years. Also causing the increases, we have the employees' cost of insurance for the contracts being flat, no increases. That contributes to this increase as well. Purchase services and supplies, you'll see a modest increase in 2025 for both of those categories because we're bringing about $3 million in ESSER funds back into the general fund. Supplies also include $3 million for textbook adoptions each year. And then we get into capital. It includes $1 million for buses every year, and then another $500,000 to get us back up to maintenance for the buildings. Back on a replacement schedule, back on a good maintenance schedule. And this page here shows the November forecast compared to the May forecast. So you can see how much all these issues we talked about are impacting the forecast. The very last page here. So the biggest change is $41.6 million in salaries went up, $28 million in fringe benefits went up, mostly due to the union contracts. Then creates a negative $70 million difference from November to May. Are there any questions?
So as we expected, as a result of our negotiations and our final contract, that's accounting for the major changes that we're seeing here.
Correct.
And so I know this is secondhand knowledge to you. So with that being the major thing, is there anything else? I know you rattled, through a lot of this. Mm-hmm. What would be another factor, the next largest factor, you would say?
We're bringing $10 million of ESSER funds back into the general fund.
You said
$10 million.
$10 million is being brought back into the general fund.
From expenses, but also bringing $20 million in this. So a net of $10 million is coming to the good for ESSER funds. So if depending on how we use that money, LTOP, it could make this look even worse if that $20 million goes to LTOP. We don't have LTOP in here yet. Also, we don't have any possible levies in here yet, or any cuts that we might have. But it's really the union contracts. And decline enrollment would be the second one, I suppose. Would be
Go right ahead.
I just wanted to clarify. I just wanted to clarify for my notes. You're saying that we would have $10 million in expenses that'll come over into the general fund.
Correct.
But we are also expecting to keep $20 million in
Right.
income from
Right now,
that
this forecast is projecting bringing $20 million of extra funds back in the general fund.
as income.
It's a plan, yes.
Okay, as a supplant
Mm-hmm.
into general fund. And then we know that also with that comes about $10 million in expenses we were expecting, which means that there's a net of $10 million in this forecast of income that are
Correct.
helping offset operating
Yes.
expenses.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
And so for the folks in the room who have the background and the knowledge, what would you say is another major thing that we need to take away from this that's important for maybe just the general public to know?
I believe the fact that Todd said right now, the money that has been transferred in from ESSER is not really allocated. So we would have to make that decision of where it's going to go. And one of the options could be LTOP. Right now, if we use it for LTOP, it would only have a greater impact on what the bottom line is. Right now, it's being used to help the budget. But, you know, LTOP would be an added deficit to
Correct.
the budget. So right now, this is the view of how it looks without that layer of LTOP. So we would want to have that discussion.
I would love to hear from Dr. Thompson as well.
I think the other piece, LTOP, for those listening, is our long-term operational plan. It's our facilities plan. We use a lot of acronyms, and it confuses people. But we've modeled this forecast with a levy. And even with the levy, it only pushes us out a couple more years. So our financial situation is, obviously, we're levy eminent in this forecast, and one levy doesn't push us out for another 10 years like we would normally anticipate or expect. So what this forecast is telling us is, A, we're levy eminent, and B, we need to make fairly significant cuts to the budget so that we can position ourselves to pass a levy and not be right back on the ballot just a few years later. So I think that's really important for, as we make these difficult decisions, as the board makes these very difficult decisions over the next month or so, understanding the full financial picture, which I think modeled for the board one more time and presented would be, what is a levy, you know, a 6.9 mil levy added to this, to see visually that it's probably only going to push us out for another 2 years or so in between two levies. So we would be levy eminent, then almost levy eminent after a passage, which I don't think anyone would say positions us well from a financial perspective.
And when we say levy imminent, we're talking May of '24.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, just to the preparation that it takes to get a levy ready, and also remember there's a lot of legislative pressure on removing administrators from this process as well, which makes organization even that much more challenging for the superintendent to kind of, or the treasurer to kind of put all this together as a result of what we've seen being litigated in terms of administrators' involvement in levies. So that just makes it even more challenging. So we'll need every bit of a year to prep for a fighting chance to pass a levy.
So for Monday, we do plan to have some levy scenarios built into the 5-year forecast for you.
Any other comments or questions or? Yeah, I haven't seen the full bill, but I also heard that even school board members are going to have some restrictions in terms of their involvement with helping their districts with levies as well.
We've been waiting now for over a year for the legislature to give us clear guidance, and we haven't received it, to my knowledge, at this point. But for example, the description that was used to describe as by the state auditor in reference to a superintendent was, typically after 5 p.m., for example, a superintendent engaging not with their laptops or the school devices, rather from home, could engage in organization of a levy. And the auditor, state auditor, said no. If the superintendent is at a basketball game at Friday night at 7 o'clock, are they not there in their official capacity as a superintendent? Well, of course, we all know the answer is yes. So essentially, he said, you're a superintendent 24/7, so therefore, you are paid by the taxpayers 24/7, and therefore, you cannot run a levy at 7 o'clock on Friday night either, because you can't remove that levy hat. Board members have a little bit more wiggle room than administrators do, primarily due to compensation, but there's even some strict restrictions that we haven't seen historically being applied to board members' activity and board and running of levies. So essentially what we need to have is a very strong organization that is community-based and not school administrator-based.
Yeah, I think that's really unfortunate. But also, when I think about the attendance at some of our most recent board meetings and all the folks in the community, I think we have a huge opportunity. And it's a matter of, I think, getting some materials translated, because I think once these families have an understanding of the needs, obviously they're going to show up. So just keeping that in mind. But I think we're kind of restricted in that way as well. But it seems like if we're producing educational materials, then that's a way to...
That's the line. So a treasurer's office can put out facts about our financial situation. A superintendent or administrators can talk factually about the financial situation or what the money might be used for, et cetera, et cetera. It's just that line of pushing over to, the word is influencing the passage of a levy. Going from facts to influencing is where the line gets gray. So we just have to stick to the facts as it relates to the need for a levy and why we're levy eminent. And I think it all the way goes back to House Bill 920 and really the genesis of why schools are funded the way they are and what that impact is. And when people understand that, I think they're more likely to be supportive.
Mm-hmm. And I just want to encourage anybody that's listening. We do have an advocacy page that explains why and how schools are funded the way they are. I think it's a great baseline of information, something that we can build off of and, again, get translated to folks who obviously support us. They just need to understand better and know how. So I don't know how we get that part started, because it seems like we probably could have started yesterday, I
think one of our assets has been the support from our business partners have always been very, very strong in support of Akron Public Schools and our scholars. And as a board, we'll have to decide how do we reach out and bring them into the loop on our efforts so that they can see if we can use them as our cheerleaders once again, because they've done an awesome job at that in the past.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Any other comments, questions? Go right ahead.
I don't know the rules on this, but we have seen a large turnout from a variety of students at the last few meetings who are especially concerned about their buildings and these levies. We do have students who are used to project-based learning and things like that. If students wanted to form a group or meet together or do something like that, in what ways are we limited in allowing them to lead that charge of what they're excited for the buildings that they're going to have?
It's a great question. So I don't know if the legislation restricts them as well.
Yeah, there's no restriction on students, so student voice is a powerful voice. Sometimes they need a little help getting organized, but yeah, students, parents, even teachers have far less restriction than administrators because they have a specific end of their day, at least recognized by the state auditor's office. So there's a lot of ways we can organize students, and students can be powerful in what they say, how they frame it, and their experiences in school. There's the perception of what school is, and then there's the reality of what our scholars see every day. So sometimes they don't match some of the negative stereotypes that are out there.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. It seems like we're already on track with how we're moving forward with student voice. So
Correct. That's what I was thinking about with Ms. Dreama Whitfield. Each of our schools have a variety of student leadership groups. It's just how do we inform them of the information to help empower them to have a voice, and also working with our Akron Council of PTAs. How do we bring our parents and our students to work together? And that's something we could even work with Stancy Sykes on supporting us with.
okay. And so there's no other questions or comments around that. The next item is just our fiscal calendar. Shows us kind of where we're at in May, which is the May forecast. So the official one will be presented to the full board on Monday with the levy scenarios built into that. And you can see the other items in May. And it looks like that's really it. That's really it for our agenda. I know it's short and sweet, but there's nothing wrong with that. Any other final parting comments at all? No?
Just the only thing that may have an impact on finances, of course, we're meeting tomorrow for our safety retreat, and from that, we will build, once we get consensus from the group, what our plan looks like moving forward, which we'll send through, of course, superintendent, and then I presume at some point soon be on a board agenda that would include, because with safety, unfortunately, comes a cost. So there are some costs associated with it. So we have those together. We'll determine what that plan looks like tomorrow. Hopefully by the end of the day, I have a pretty good handle on that. And then at some point soon be presenting that data. And some of our surveys back from Yonder Bags, for example, from both parents and staff are overwhelmingly supportive. So that'll all be brought forward, and Ms. Otley will, I'm sure, inform the board of how we move forward from there.
And so I know you've given us a gazillion options on LTOP. And so I guess I'm just inquiring as to, is that something that we plan on revisiting at the next board meeting maybe? Or are we still kind of fleshing out some things, or?
Inquiry minds. Yes. So we do plan to have some information prepared for the next board meeting around a possible option that the board may want to look into, further into investigating, considering.
Okay. All righty. Okay. Well, I just want to thank you guys for your work on the LTOP specifically, because that has it's been huge for us. And I know as board members, we're kind of almost been like deer in the headlights, like, oh my goodness. And so I know we're, been waiting for this quick magic cure, but the truth is there is none. We have to make some tough decisions. So I just appreciate the presentation and the work on giving us the information that, we need to know and making the decisions moving forward. So with that being said, are there any other items for consideration or comments? Okay. Well, if not, we will adjourn the meeting at this time at 5:08. And thank you, everyone.